These courtrooms often hear about the very darkest sides of humanity, but even the judge here today said this case was deeply disturbing and very serious. He said the defendant was a devious and manipulative young man with an unhealthy and unacceptable interest in young boys. Because of the young age of both the defendant and his victim, we can't reveal their identities. The defendant is 16 years old and his victim just 5. The case relates to an incident that happened in July this year. The 5-year-old boy was playing in a garden near his home in Tameside when the older boy approached him and said that he'd lost a ball. He said if the younger one helped him to find it, he would give him a lightsaber toy. He then lured the 5-year-old boy back to his house. When they were there and alone, the older boy raped and sexually assaulted him. When the ordeal was over, the younger boy went home, having been told not to tell anybody anything about what had happened. But later that day, the boy's parents noticed something was wrong. They said he was upset and subdued and had had trouble sleeping that night. He then told his mother what had happened. He described it as disgusting and said, "I didn't like it. It made me feel dirty and sad."
This has been a traumatic ordeal for my whole family, and particularly for my 6-year-old son, who has had to go through what no one else, let alone a young innocent boy, should ever have gone through. It's been a harrowing time, but I'm glad it's finally over, and we can now draw a line under everything and move on with our lives.
It's not the first time the defendant had done something like this. Almost exactly a year before, in July 2008, he'd raped another young boy who was aged just 7 years old. For that attack, he was sentenced in June this year and given a community rehabilitation order. But just 8 days after getting that sentence, he went on to rape the 5-year-old boy. The 5-year-old's parents have said that since the attack, he's regressed emotionally and lost any desire to go to school, to read or to learn.
The reason we wanted to bring our son's case to the media and the public was because we know there are other children and their families who are going through something similar and may be suffering in silence. You should not feel ashamed. Please come forward. If you speak out, we can stop this sort of abuse, and the support is available to help put people who commit these awful crimes behind bars.
The judge said he had no hesitation in classing the defendant as a dangerous offender and locked him up indefinitely for the protection of the public. He said he'd serve a minimum of 3 years, but emphasised that the defendant would not be released until he was considered to be no longer a risk to the public. And that, said the judge, would not be for a considerably long time. Ben Bland, Channel M Today.